my name is Malia, and today we are going to be talking about surface tension. And so I have a couple different experiments that we can do with surface tension. And so I find that some of them might be a little bit better for younger audiences, or if kids are really interested in them. So it all depends on what you really have time for. And so the one that we will be starting out with today is going to be our paperclip experiment. And so to get everything kind of set up, you're going to need, two kind of little containers, one to keep all of your little materials in so that little hands don't want to grab onto them, and then one for all of your water. And then you are also going to need just regular dish soap, and your little materials are going to be paper clips and pennies. And then for our other experiments today, we're also going to need water droppers and just regular pepper. And I also find it's really kind of helpful, especially on a cart, if you have, a water jug or pitcher of some sort to kind of carry your water in so it's not all over the place. And it's also really helpful to get a waste container and a towel for cleanup in between experiments. So to start off with, for the paperclip experiment, kind of talking about surface tension, we're going to start, and you're just going to try and set all of your little paper clips on the surface of the water. And so I find that it's really easy if you want to bend the tip of your paper clip into a little flag, just because it makes it much easier to set on the surface of the water. And so you kind of have to practice this part a little bit, because sometimes they will sink through, but you're usually able to just pretty much pick it up out of the water and just go for it again. And I've also found that it's a lot easier to use paper clips that are covered in plastic versus metal paper clips, because the metal paper clips usually want to kind of stick together. And so at this point in the experiment, you kind of start asking kids, have you ever seen any examples of surface tension? And one really good one that I like to mention and refer back to the picture is the water skipper. So, have you ever been swimming in a pool or, a body of water and seen these bugs? And, why do you think that they're able to walk on top of the water when you can't? And it's a really good launch into, well, it's because of this property called surface tension. And so surface tension is, kind of talking about how the molecules of water interact, and the molecules that are in the middle of the, body of water are getting hugged by these forces on all sides. So they're getting hugged much tighter by the molecules around them, from the top and the bottom and diagonally, versus the molecules on the top of the water, the surface tension. The molecules on the surface aren't getting hugged on all directions, but they still want to be hugged just as tightly or have as much attractive force as, the molecules in the middle, and so they'll squeeze much tighter with the molecules that are around them. And so this creates kind of a sheet on the top of the water, on the surface. And so you can, take advantage of this with the paper clips or with pepper, or, as the water skipper does. And there are a couple of other animals that kind of take advantage of this property. But, it's really easy to see here with the paper clips. And something that we kind of like to use to demonstrate that is if you add a drop of soap into the water, kind of just like that. You just need one drop. And so, you can go in and kind of explain that the soap breaks the surface tension. The soap wants to get in there, and it's very attractive to the water molecules. And so it gets in there and it breaks the surface all across, even though we've only added one drop of soap. For as much water as we have, it was able to kind of break that surface tension very easily. And so that's a really good experiment. It does take a little bit of time to set up, and so I usually find that it's easier to kind of talk and explain that while I'm trying to put the paper clips on the water and all of that kind of stuff. And so cleanup's pretty easy for it too. You are going to have to, if you do multiple experiments, you will have to kind of break out your tub and ditch your old soapy water, because the other experiments will not work if you have soap in that water. And so it's really good to carry around a towel, so you can just kind of wipe out your dish. And then everything fits back on there pretty nicely. And so the next one that we're going to do today is the pepper experiment, which works very, very similar to the paperclip experiment, but I usually find that if I have younger audiences or if I am in an area that is very exciting and the kids don't like to, I can't hold the kids' attention for very long, this is a pretty good one because it's easier to see, it goes a lot faster, you don't have to mess with the paper clips, and so it works very similarly. And so you will just take your pepper and sprinkle it on the surface of the water. And you can see that it acts very similar to the paper clips, just kind of floating on the top. And so that's when you could talk about, the molecules and, what other examples the kids see in surface tension, or of surface tension. And then when you add the drop of soap. And so you can see that this works very similarly to the paperclip experiment. All of the pepper has kind of pushed itself to the side and then started to sink down. And so, I usually find that this works very well if I have a younger audience or if I'm in an area of the museum where I might not be the most exciting thing around, in energy exchange or something like that. So it's just a really good way to demonstrate the same property without all of the time and all of that kind of stuff. So cleanup is the same, just kind of dumping the whole peppery, soapy thing into the bin. And so that is the last one, or the last experiment that I have that we use the water for, or the dish for. And so our third experiment is one that I kind of like to do if the kids are, really interested in, surface tension and kind of what I've got to offer. And so for the third experiment, it's really interesting to, get the kids involved and have them be able to, work on the experiment too. And so you can kind of lead in by asking them how many drops of water they think that they can fit on the surface of a penny. And so I usually just fill up this littler dish with the water because usually if I fill up the larger dish, it tends to go everywhere. And so you can give the kids these little water droppers and they can sit here and kind of experiment with how many drops of water they can fit on the surface of the penny. And I usually try to do this on kind of the leveler surface of the cart, kind of here up towards the sides. It kind of tends to do a little bit of an incline, and so just make sure that they've got a smooth surface to work on. But so, a lot of times I'll ask, well, how many drops do you think will be able to, fit on the surface? And it's usually like, 3, 4, 5. But once you kind of start getting into, being able to fit 10 or so drops on the penny, you can start to see that it kind of does a little bubble over the top of the penny. And so that is another property of surface tension, and it kind of relates back to why water droplets are round, like when it's raining, or if you see, a little plink of water, if you drop something into the water, surface tension causes the water to kind of suck in on itself. And so if you just have one drop of it, all of that, force is going to kind of pull into the very center, which causes it to be round. And so it is also one of the reasons why bubbles are round as well. And it's just a really good hands-on experiment for especially younger kids who are interested, but it does require a little bit of hand-eye coordination in terms of the droppers. I've definitely had kids just spray it all over the table before, so kind of make sure you know your audience. But that is the last experiment that I have in terms of surface tension, and kind of going back through, it's really easy to get both the kids and the adults involved. I usually like to let the kids, either be the one to put the drop of soap in either the, for either the pepper or the paperclip experiment, or, be the one to sprinkle the pepper on top. I also like to let the adults do the water in the dishes, just because it does let them know, hey, this is going to be kind of an interactive thing for the whole family, and it kind of gets them interested as well. So again, cleanup for this one's pretty easy. You've got your towel because you do have watery paper or watery pennies that you kind of just have to pick up and dry off. and then you will usually have to wipe down your cart after that one. So just be aware, I usually like to do that one last, just because it does require a little bit more of cleanup sometimes. But then your water can also just, again, go right into your waste bucket. And so, after you've cleaned up all of your small materials that you dumped out of your little dish, that should be the end of that experiment. Some good kind of facilitating questions to, ask at the end is, why do you think the soap, did what it did for either the pepper or the, paperclip experiment? Why does the water kind of form a little bubble on top of the penny? So there are just a couple good questions to get them thinking and get them thinking about molecules and, the forces that are in between them and, what everything is made up of. So thank you for watching my video. I hope that helps. Have a great day. Is there anything else I should?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna end it like that.
Oh, thank you.